I don't know. What am I saying? Who are you? What's your name?
I don't know.
What do people need to know?
Maybe we should go and listen to other podcasts and see how they start. Hello, welcome to Le Pod. It's a brand new podcast we're going to be putting out from down here in the basement of Le Pub twice a month. We're going to be talking to our staff, our community, local bands, local artists, and anyone we think is interesting.
Yes. Welcome to episode number 17 of Le Pod. As always, a classic episode in store for you. I sounded sarcastic then. I don't know why. It is a class episode. I loved it. I loved it when we recorded it. I loved it when I listened back to it. I love it now. It's great. It's just hard to know what to say in these intro bits, I guess, when it's just me and a microphone speaking, trying to be upbeat and enthusiastic without knowing who I'm talking to, really. On that point, actually, tell me who I'm talking to. Get involved. If you're a listener of Le Pod, and I know there are at least several listeners, I see the numbers going up. Someone, somewhere is listening to us. So, whoever you are, firstly, thank you for listening. It means a lot. Secondly, get involved. Get in touch on any of our social media. Tell us what we're doing well, what we're doing badly, who you might like to see in future. We've got an email address as well with that official of a podcast now. lepodpodcast@gmail.com. Chuck us an email, and that goes to any kind of bands or artists or anyone out there who might like to appear on the pod in the future. Because, as today's episode and today's guest is evidence of, all you need as a qualifier to appear on the pod is for me and the rest of the pod/Le Pub team to think that you're awesome and to think that what you're doing is important. That's literally it. If we like it, we will give you a pedestal. We will bring you on, we will chat, and we will put out that chat to the people, to you Le Pod listeners. And going on from that, without further ado, today's guest is the singer of Dublin-based garage noise outfit Sprints. Her name's Karla Chubb, and she's great. She's fantastic. Today's episode is probably the one so far with the least link to Le Pub. They haven't played the pub. I'm not sure they've ever played Newport or South Wales even for that matter. But I read about them in DIY magazine actually fairly recently, only a few months ago. And then I really liked kind of what was written and what they sounded like. And so I listened to their first single, The Cheek, on Spotify straight after. Legitimately, I was blown away. Loved it. Loved the sound, loved her voice, loved the message and the meaning behind what they were saying. And there and then I messaged them on Instagram. I was like, I want to speak to you guys. I want to see what you're about. Please come on my podcast. And they were gracious enough to do so. So here we are. Here is the episode with Sprints. They're going on tour, a UK tour towards the end of the year, playing Bristol in October in Rough Trade. It's the closest date to us. I don't know where you are. You could be anywhere listening to this, but it's the closest date to me, selfishly. So come and join me at that one. And yeah, the conversation was fantastic, as you're about to find out, and we talked about all sorts, including...
I think it's almost like you see these magazines like when you're younger and you're a music fan, and you almost don't feel like you're big enough really to be acknowledged by them. So we're very aware that we're still very new and haven't put a whole lot of material out. I suffer quite badly with imposter syndrome, and particularly feeling like I always have to prove myself. That sometimes when I'm writing songs, I kind of judge them incredibly harshly, or I will try to like complicate them or like music theory them up or something to make them seem fancier and more impressive. Things like getting our first interview in NME, or our first BBC Six radio play, our first live stream, those kind of things, rather than looking outward at how people would legitimize us. We're looking at things that we can ourselves use as kind of little motivational checks.
So there you have it. Let's get on with it, shall we? Episode 17 with Karla Chubb of Sprints. Check out their EP, Manifesto, on all Spotify and Spotify-like platforms now. If you like it, go see them, buy a ticket, check them out, and when you're not doing that sort of thing, come on down to Le Pub. We're open again, mentioned it before. We are very busy, so book a table beforehand to avoid disappointment, as they say. And if I'm on shift, it's more than likely Sprints will be playing on the speakers anyway, because I really like them. So you can kill two birds with one stone. Come on down to the pub and listen to Sprints. Here we are, cracking. Episode 17, Karla Chubb. Thank you. Great, so I'm joined by Karla from Sprints. How are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, busy few weeks, but
yeah,
good to be busy again.
Yeah, I'm sure. As you guys were in the studio recently, right?
Yeah, we were indeed.
Is there like things on the horizon? Are there things in the works, or is it all kind of hush hush still?
It's all a bit hush hush still. But yeah, lots. I think we're fortunate enough that we haven't stopped writing really. So
Right.
we've been waiting to get in the studio for months, pretty much since Manifesto was recorded. We had like a load of material good to go, and then obviously the pandemic struck. And the first couple weeks of the lockdown were very productive, and obviously as time went on, the creativity started to slip away a little bit. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've been dying to get back in. So hopefully in the next few weeks we'll have lots to confirm and lots to announce.
Great, awesome. So you say you kind of wrote a lot during lockdown. Are you kind of close geographically and stuff? Do you kind of, are you always around each other? Were you able to still write and record and stuff, or how did it work logistically?
We're all based in Dublin, and we're all based pretty much within like the same 10, 20k radius, but Ireland had one of the strictest lockdowns, I think, of the entire Europe.
Yeah, it
We were
seemed
pretty
it.
much in level 5 since December, and before that we were in very severe lockdown. So for the first, I think, 6 months we couldn't see each other. I took to teaching myself GarageBand and Logic, and
Okay.
kind of shooting my ideas through there, passing them to Sam, who would add bass and some kind of percussion elements and backing vocals, and we'd send them to the guys, and it's kind of just been like SoundCloud playlists like between us all,
Right.
hoping we could rehearse again. But yeah, we're fortunate that I think it was summertime when the restrictions eased a little bit, and we were getting offers for streams and for kind of work that we were able to get work letters,
Right.
and
Okay.
we're lucky enough that we don't live with family, so um I live in an apartment and a lot of the guys live out of home, so don't have a lot of vulnerable people around us. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's been
fortunate.
a bit mad.
Yeah, cool. So how long have Sprints been around? Because like I first saw you guys literally just before I messaged you to see if you wanted to come on the podcast in DIY Mag in the new section there. So I thought you were a new band. Have you been around for a little while, or?
I think we are pretty new, like in the classification of what like a new band
In the
is.
grand scale of
Um,
things, yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, yeah, I'd say we're considered pretty new. I think our first single with Nice Swan came out like 20, I think it might have been 2020, like halfway through the year. So
Okay,
this has been our first like proper full year.
right. Was that The Cheek, the first single? Yeah.
That was the Cheeks, the
Okay.
first one we did.
Yeah.
So we released a song ourselves, Kissing Practice, in February, and I think the Cheek came out eventually. It was July,
Right.
with Nice One because it was supposed to be much sooner, but obviously that was just when COVID started.
Yeah.
And then we had the EP done already, and it was just lucky enough that we were able to release it. We kind of didn't want to hang around and hold on to it for too long. And once it looked like things were going to be pretty long term with COVID and lockdown and restrictions, we just thought better to get it out there. So
Yeah.
it is pretty much this is our second year technically. We're
Right.
first 1.5 way mark, but yeah,
Yeah.
still new.
You're kind of getting quite a lot of attention. Like I've seen you in NME and DIY, and I was reading something in the Times even where you were name checked. I think I saw it on your Instagram, and
Yeah.
you're getting quite a lot of attention. People writing about you. Is it obviously that's a good thing? It gets the word out there, but is it frustrating at all that it's during a time where you can't really capitalize, like you can't go out and push the word yourself?
I think yes and no. Like I think we've been incredibly fortunate, and so thankful for all the support we've gotten. Like I think things like NME and DOI, the Times and everything you just name checked
Yeah.
there, and like even like the likes of Nine and Hot Press here
Right.
in Ireland, like everyone's been very good to us. And I think it's almost like you see these magazines like when you're younger and you're a music fan, and you almost don't feel like you're big enough really to be
Yeah.
acknowledged by them. So we're very aware that we're still very new and haven't put a whole lot of material out. Like one EP, we have to remind ourselves is always still like very, very new beginnings. Um, and it's frustrating to not be able to capitalize on it, but at the same time, I think that the way things are has almost propelled or accelerated
Yeah. True.
us even a little bit better because there's such a thirst and such an appetite for new music and for the arts, and people are always turning to the arts during kind of difficult times. I think the appetite for independent music particularly, and supporting local and supporting independent, has grown. So I think it's done us a massive favour, to be honest, and it's great to see the support coming in, and we're hopeful that the more we release, the bigger the support will grow as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. As soon as I heard your stuff, I heard The Cheek first. I loved it straight away. It was really great, right up my street. I loved it. And I thought this would be amazing live. Like, I was gutted that I'm not able to see it live yet, which made me think, have you, considering you only released your first stuff in 2020, have you had much live experience yet? Have you been able to kind of showcase them on the road?
So as individuals, and some of us together have played in bands before.
Yeah.
As sprints, I think we've only had like a handful of gigs, to be honest. I think we played a couple gigs in 2019, and then 2020, I think that's when we did our first headliner with MCD in Dublin, and did like our first sellout show in Whelan's upstairs. And then we played Other Voices in Ballina, which was amazing. But that was our last gig.
Right.
And that was February. So it's been a bit of a mad experience. I think in our heads we feel like we've played loads, but looking back and actually thinking about it, it's like anyone who knows us now probably has never seen us live.
Yeah,
we've grown, and
definitely
before that it was
the
just kind of our
majority.
friends.
Yeah,
The majority of people would never have seen us, and we always forget that. So it's obviously really, really exciting to think about getting out in the road, but also really nerve-wracking because it's almost like this constant building of pressure of, like, we always say and reference ourselves as a very much a live band, but no one's seen us live, so we're almost adding that pressure to ourselves to be really, really great now when people finally see us.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned quickly then that you've had some other experience in bands and stuff. Like, have you played similar sorts of music, similar sorts of things, or is it a completely different sound in sprints now?
It's completely different. I think sprints is kind of the culmination of all of our individual experience, and like learning a lot and applying those learnings to really hit the ground running with this band. And I think it's a natural progression and development of our tastes and our songwriting ability. I always kind of wrote guitar and wrote songs in my bedroom when I was a teenager, like the classic angsty teen kind of cliche. And I always played very folky, like acoustic stuff, just because I didn't have the resources or anyone around me to play music with, that I never thought it'd be possible for me to play this style of music, which is my favorite, like that kind of post-punk, garage, noise kind of experience. And Jack and Colm have played together since they were kids. They grew up on the same road. They've known each other since they were about 10. So I think that's when they started their first band.
Yeah.
And Sam went to school with them as well. So they've always been a kind of a close-knit group. So individually, music was always super important to us. And we all kind of did our own thing. But coming together, I think, was the first time we ever really started writing music that we were super passionate about.
Right, yeah. Interesting you say that you kind of grew up on more folky kind of stuff, you in your bedroom, because I think that comes through in like the lyrics, like there's a very prominent lyrical style and lyrical subjects and stuff as well. Is that, would you say, kind of carried over from that sort of upbringing, I guess?
Yeah, I think, absolutely. I think there's like elements in a lot of our songwriting from loads of different genres. Like when I grew up, I think my first experience with music was like a lot of Motown and soul, because my mom was a massive fan.
Okay, nice.
Of like the Phil Spector era, and the Supremes, and like the Isley Brothers, and my dad was very much into like David Bowie, and Patti Smith and like Madonna and all that kind of 80s, 70s, 60s stage. So I grew up with a real mishmash of influences. But I think, it was like discovering people like Cat Stevens, like really made me fall in love with songwriting.
Right, yeah.
So I do try carry that like emotive, probably a little bit subconsciously, to be honest, that emotive kind of storytelling aspect falls into the music a lot. But I think most of it comes down to the fact that it's almost like a creative outlet and a therapy session for me personally.
Right.
So
yeah,
I use it very much as a very personal experience.
Yeah. And as well as kind of the personal experiences, well, I guess it's combined with the personal experiences. It seems like you not tackle, but like address kind of social issues and just things going on in everyday life as well. Is that an important thing, or does that just come naturally to you as a songwriter, or how do you think that works?
I think it comes naturally now.
Yeah.
The Cheek was really the first song that we ever wrote that was tackling like a social issue or like addressing like a real problem that we've experienced or noticed in our society.
Yeah.
Um, I think writing like that is number one a way for me to hold myself accountable, and to remind myself that there's always more to be done and there's always more to learn and more to educate yourself on. I think I've never been the most politically educated or politically wise person, and it's almost a way for me to remind myself that I need to be, and there's a lot
Right.
of things affecting us that um I could talk about, but I still wouldn't understand them enough myself, and that's why I think we always try not take a very preachy tone, because at the end of the day, there's always more for everyone to learn. But I think it comes naturally now because it's just kind of like it's more about our day-to-day life, and it just happens that these issues are
Yeah.
appearing in it because they're so prominent in our day-to-day life and our friends and our life in Dublin and the struggles of a creative in Dublin, and like the rental crisis and the homeless crisis and the rampant amount of drug use and everything that's
Right.
kind of rising. So it is very much biographical, and it happens to have this kind of societal lens on it because it's just what we're experiencing.
Yeah. Is that swimming that you're referring to there at the end?
I think swimming and manifesto,
Yeah.
yeah, will be the two biggest, and the cheek probably as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's some of them that are more pointed than others, and some that aren't related at all. But I think everything we write is definitely based very much on a specific story or a moment, and it's always really, really rooted in real life.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I found like my balance is, like Ashley is kind of this satirical take on online dating, and the only kind of character driven song I've ever written, like from the perspective of someone who falls in love with someone online,
Right.
and the personality they want you to perceive is not actually who they are at all. But again, very rooted in real experience of us all having to date online or meet
Yeah.
people in a strange virtual world, um, and how weird it can be. So I think that realness is always the root that kind of keeps us grounded and makes sure that it's something that people can relate to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember where I read it, but somewhere you were talking about the cheek and how it kind of addresses I don't know what the word you used was, like fetishization and kind of hypersexualization of people in the
Mm,
LGBT community. And I don't know if I'm just super sheltered and unaware, but I didn't even know that was a thing. Like I obviously
yeah.
I hadn't experienced it for myself, but yeah, I didn't know that that was a problem. And I think that's like it's a kind of a great thing about songs that they can convey those messages to people like myself who might not have experienced them or might not even know there's a problem in a way that's digestible, I guess, and approachable.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I think that's the entire point of music and writing, and like even like poetry and storytelling is it's like it's yeah, it's to open up to other experiences, and that's saying someone who doesn't sit in my shoes would never see that. And same
Yeah,
thing, if Sam wrote something from his like perspective in his life, I might not perceive it that way or understand it. So I think that's why I just try to be like super brutally honest, almost to a fault in the
hmm.
writing. Because if people can relate or learn something, then it's obviously really great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So moving back, we mentioned live kind of experience and stuff, but moving forward to your live things that you have coming up, because you have the Great Escape live festival on Thursday, Friday, soon.
I think it's yeah, it's what Wednesday. It must be Thursday, Friday. Yeah,
Yeah. How how does that even work? Like, have you already recorded it? Is it live? Is it like how does a
yeah,
festival online work? I'm confused and
yeah. I
interested.
think this is like the industry of live stream.
Yeah.
It's so strange because at the start, I think people really didn't want you to know that live streams are pre-recorded.
Right.
But the cat's obviously kind of out of the bag at this stage with the
Yeah.
amount of them that have happened. But yeah. So we were lucky enough to be invited down to the Olympia Theatre in Dublin, which
Oh,
is
nice.
iconic venue, like incredible. It was probably like the most nervous I've ever been because to stand on that stage, like with so many people that you've loved and you've seen, is
Yeah.
was really kind of amazing. But then for it to be dead empty, and dead quiet was also even eerier.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of the live streams you'd often be invited down, and everything will be recorded live in terms of your audio and your video, and there wouldn't be a lot of post production done to it. It's just the
Okay.
fact they want to capture the live energy, and it'll be streamed at a later date. Purely, I think most of the time because it's just like with no matter how good your Wi-Fi or anything is, streaming
Yeah.
a 4K resolution with audio and live visuals would just be a nightmare. So
True.
I think to give the fans the best experience, it's best to pre-record it but it's still streaming a live performance.
Yeah, yeah. Is there any kind of like sense of continuity amongst the acts as well to make it like more of a festival? Was there like Great Escape signs or branding or something when you were performing, or was it just you guys on the stage?
I think oftentimes because they're streamed at later dates, they try to keep it like quite hush hush.
Yeah,
But I think it still feels very festival like because we were like standing in the lobby and waiting to go on, and Soda Blonde were finishing up
right.
before us. So they were like setting down and taking their gear off, and then we were up, and it was very, very fast paced. It was like in and out. You had an hour, set up, play your songs,
Oh wow.
and set down, next band in. So it feels very much like a gig, like that kind of rush, that adrenaline you get when you're just about to be called to the stage, and like
Yeah,
the lights go down and all that kind of stuff. So it was nice. But yeah, I that's our experience with that was kind of our biggest live stream today. But again, there's no telling what the experiences are like in other places. There probably is branding and all that kind of stuff. But
yeah, maybe.
when things are kept under wraps, I think they're afraid of and super aware of social and
Yeah,
pictures and stuff getting out in advance. So probably better to keep it a surprise.
yeah, I guess so. I was reading something from the singer from Buzzard. He's a band from Cardiff. They kind of get around a bit, and they were talking because they were supposed to play South by Southwest, literally just before the pandemic, and the kind of rug was pulled out from beneath them, and that didn't happen. And but they did manage to play Glastonbury in 2019, so they were kind of comparing those two experiences and saying how festivals are kind of almost levels for a band, almost kind of things that legitimize bands in other people's eyes. Like, oh, you've played Glastonbury?
Yeah.
Like, whoa, you're a band, you're a real band kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you feel with a lack of those legitimizing opportunities? Do you kind of feel that, or do you see like things like the Great Escape as substitutes, or how do you feel?
I think you feel it a little bit, but to be honest, I think we're lucky that we're quite mature now, and what we're trying to look at in terms of like legitimizing things is almost like our own personal bucket list. So things like getting our first interview in NME, or
Right.
our first BBC Six radio play, our first live stream, those kind of things, rather than looking outward at how people would legitimize us. We're looking at things that we can ourselves use as kind of little motivational checks and little stepping stones, because I think oftentimes we see a band kind of they don't exist and then they're huge and they're like really like in your attention or in the media, and they're really big and they're really covered everywhere.
Buzz
It's
bands,
almost like,
yeah.
yeah, like people like Fontaines, like you could look at
Yeah,
them and people would think, God, they just came out of nowhere and they exploded. But they were actually gigging for years and really
exactly, yeah.
slugging away and working really hard. So it's almost like we don't want to get too distracted or too, I think, discouraged even if we don't get things like BBC playlisted or you don't get this massive festival. It's almost like the minor steps to us that we can keep motivated and keep going. We're confident that things will progress and keep progressing anyway. So we're lucky it's been quick. But yeah, trying to just focus on that ourselves.
Yeah. So funny that you say you have your own kind of personal bucket list that you're trying to tick off, because it made me think of Manifesto, the title of your EP, like your statement, what you want to say. Is that the kind of band and people you are? Like you have your statement, you have your manifesto. Do you even? I was thinking about like the Manic Street Preachers. They were always they still are a very manifesto-driven band. Literally, like written down things that they want to achieve and images and ideas and stuff. Is that the kind of band that you are? Very kind of manifesto-driven.
I think, yeah, I think we not I think we're very much a verbal band. We're
Right.
probably terrible at organization and writing stuff down, but yeah, there's definitely times where we come together. Like when we rehearse, we'll often have sessions where it's just literally rehearsing set lists or it's writing. And there's times we'll meet up, like tomorrow we're going to meet up and we're just going to go through all the stuff we did in the studio and write notes and come together and make a plan. I think we're very collaborative because we are friends first,
Yeah.
in that sense. But I think Manifesto was called Manifesto purposely for that purpose, is to give ourselves a foundation to build off. And I think we always will be an outspoken band and very goal orientated and very driven, and we definitely have our sights set on making this a career and
Yeah.
not just kind of willy-nilly like putting songs out and hoping for the best. um which I think is also a big misconception. Like bands, you have to be very business savvy, you have to be very strategy wise, and
Yeah.
there's so much planning that goes on into everything that you do. But yeah, there's definitely goals, and we're definitely looking toward like labels and album deals, and we're looking 2 or 3 years down the line as opposed to 2 or 3 singles down the line.
Yeah, that's great. I see so many bands, even on this podcast, that do exactly what you just said that you shouldn't do. They just write songs. They just go with it, and they get taken advantage of. They get ripped off by managers, and they lose out on money and opportunities and stuff. It's so sad when that happens, but it doesn't sound like it's on the cards for you lot at all. Like you seem like, yeah, you know what you're doing. You know what you want to be doing.
Yeah, I think in terms of the business side of stuff, we're lucky that Nice One are so sound, and Alex from Nice One actually lectures in BIMS and
Ah,
lectures in
okay.
business management. So he's like recommending books to us all the time to read because we
Yeah,
haven't a clue. But we're really eager to learn. And I think the one thing we have going for us is that drive and that real passion. Like there's probably not a day that goes by that we don't speak
yeah,
or we don't message about something. And of course we do like just go and write, and we just go play music, and we just let it like flow out of us, so to speak, or whatever
yeah,
the creative term is. Um, but yeah, once that is done, once the songwriting and the creativity and the flowing and that kind of natural process is done, it is very strategic. We sit down and go, right, who do we want to do the PR? Who are we targeting? What are our targets for the campaign? And it's a shame that there has to be that real business process, but at the end
yeah,
of the day, you have to be like that with your career. And we're very serious about making it happen. And I think any bands that we've come across in Dublin that ask for advice or help, that's like I think there was a real nature of gatekeeping within music for a long
mm-hmm,
time
yeah,
where people don't want to share, and we're just like super honest and tell people exactly what we did, who we reached out into radio, how we got press. And I think that's the only way to reduce the chances of people being screwed over is to help educate all of us and educate everyone and share knowledge, because yeah, if we know everything by contracts, we're not going to sign a dodgy one. But
yeah.
it's always hard to teach that to yourself as well.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of people, I get the feeling that they think the business side of things almost dilutes the creative side of things. Like you can't have both, or one lessens the other. Which I just don't. Well, I don't think it's true. But part of me kind of, I don't know if this like the romanticizing of artistry and stuff kind of sees the truth in that. But I definitely don't think that it's ultimately true at all.
Yeah, and I think there is absolutely artists out there who do just do the creative part and
Yeah,
they'll succeed. And there's people who are really good at the business part and not necessarily super strong at the creative part, but will still succeed. I think naturally, I've always just been a little bit left-brained and right-brained. I've always been
right.
very teetering between creativity and strategy. Even in like my career, I was a creative strategist. That was like my
Yeah,
job, was to sit between the two worlds. So it feels natural for me to be creative, but then also really think about how to strategically execute those ideas. So it's nice that I'm able to kind of tap into that. And I'm very fortunate that Sam is in the same way as well. And Colin is one of those people who just shows up and just creates. Like he's just
yeah,
such a natural musician. Like he can never listen to a song. I'll play it to him and he'll be noodling away on the guitar 2 seconds later. And Jack is the same with his music, but again, he's very academic and incredibly intelligent as well. So when it comes to like the grant applications or anything written or like research based, or even like if I need the backing up for the political bits that I write in songs, like he's
yeah.
got the education and the know-how.
Right.
So I think we're a nice kind of balancing act. But yeah, obviously the creativity and the music comes first, but it's good that we care about the other parts as well, because it makes it really easy to be hands-on and kind of protect your baby.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's funny that you kind of complement each other, like you were just saying there, because on record as well, musically, like you really gel. You really kind of like you listen to a lot of bands, and it almost feels like the musicians are competing. Almost, they want their
Mm.
part to be center stage, but you guys, it just kind of works together. The drums and the guitar and the bass, it's like literally you're on singing from the same hymn sheet, to use the phrase. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. And was that something that had to be worked on, or did you just kind of get together and started to gel straight away? Or
To be completely honest, it happened really, really naturally. Like myself, Colin, and Jack played in a band before together. And we were kind of at that point where we had to make a decision if we wanted to pursue it seriously or if we just wanted to play a couple of gigs a year and just
yeah,
have a bit of fun. And we kind of said like, we'll ask Sam, does he want to jam with us once? And if it works, we'll keep going. And if it doesn't, listen, we'll just have fun and that'll be it. And Sam came and it did just kind of click instantaneously. I think we all share similar influences and like favorite artists like LCD and Talking Heads,
Yeah.
and PJ Harvey. So when we kind of gave those references as the starting point for what would be sprints, it kind of gelled, and Sam on bass really was kind of like the final missing piece. And ever since, I think because we're not very classically or theory trained, it was always very much that kind of jam session style. I'd
Right.
go in with an idea, Colin would play over it, Jack play over it, Sam would join in, and we just very naturally work on songs. So I think that's what helped the gelling, and that's what helps that kind of natural chemistry. Is the fact that it always did kind of happen and parts came about very naturally in rehearsal and in the studio.
Right. Do you work on the musical kind of instrumentation of the songs first, or lyrics first, or is it's not really a set pattern yet?
There is no set pattern, to be
No.
honest. The general process would be like I'd come to everyone, or Sam would come to everyone with like the bones of an idea. I could sometimes go in with literally just a riff. I could come in with like an entire structure, and chord progressions and stuff, or just like an acoustic guitar, like on my voice notes on my phone, and I just play it to them. And sometimes that can just be like a line in my head that kind of manifests it, or it could be like musically I could hear something in my head that I want to get down on paper. Um, and I found that it's become much more collaborative and much more natural recently. I find myself even lyrically reading so much about like Patti Smith and like Joe Talbot and PJ Harvey. When I used to read that, sometimes they'd go to the studio and just make stuff up on the spot, or
Yeah.
it would just be words they'd later try apply to music. I thought that was mad, but I found myself doing that more and more now,
All
kind
right.
of subconsciously, that um a lot of the songs I just record literal like jumble from my head over the demos that I'd sent
Oh,
through GarageBand. And some of those lyrics have actually just ended up on the final tracks in the studio because they kind of fit the theme of that like anxious, like running subconscious,
right. Yeah.
or like the ramblings of your mind. So it can be such a changing pattern. It sounds so like cliched and pretentious, but it's like whatever like the mood of the music, like where
Yeah.
it takes us,
No, that makes
kind of just like
sense.
it's almost like it just fills in the gaps very naturally.
Yeah. It kind of even more makes sense with your like spoken word delivery. Like it's not all spoken word. You
Mm,
definitely do sing and go for it in certain parts of the songs. But yeah, the spoken word kind of stuff, which is I guess a common attribute of a lot of the post punk bands coming out at the moment. Like it just works really well with both like the delivering the message that we were talking about earlier and just going with the overall style of the song as well.
yeah, I think like to be honest, I'm just someone who doesn't really know when to shut up. So I feel like I ramble a lot. I don't use enough punctuation and I don't take enough breaths between my sentences and stuff like that. So it's very David Byrne. I think that's probably where I pulled it from, is my love for Talking Heads, is he's always kind of done the spoken word verse and the core and the singing chorus,
Yeah.
which I've kind of found a real nice home in. I think it works for me. It works for my voice and it works for the amount of ideas and words I have in my head that I want to put into one thought all the time. So
Yeah.
squeezing as much into 3 minutes as I can,
Yeah.
usually.
It's weird, like it's a completely foreign type of songwriting to me. Like I always, when I hear a song, if I write a song and I'm with the singer or whatever, we kind of straight away we're looking for a melody. Whereas with a
Yeah.
spoken word verse, you still like it's not just monotone. Like you still have your cadence and stuff. I guess. How does that come about? Is it the same way as a melody, or is it just literally how it comes out, or how do you deliver it?
Sometimes it's literally how it comes out. And like, I think some of our songs are definitely more spoken wordy than the others. A lot of them, like, The Cheek was the first one I ever wrote that was that spoken wordy.
Mm,
And that was purely because I wanted something to feel like it was being shouted at you.
right.
Um, but yeah, I think it's strange because I always wrote melodies as well. And now that I've fallen into this kind of half spoken word, half singing, I actually find it harder to go back and write songs not in that
Oh,
style.
interesting. Yeah.
Because it's become kind of habitual at this
Mm,
stage. Um, but yeah, I think it just kind of I think the melody for the vocal always I try complement or it falls out of the guitar, or whatever the guitar's doing, because obviously that's what I play and that's
yeah.
the instrument I'm most at home with. So whenever I'm writing something, it's generally a riff and a vocal line kind of at the same time. Um, and yeah, I think that's a misconception about the spoken word kind of stuff, is that it is like monotone. Like you look at the likes like Patti Smith, and there's
Yeah.
a clear cadence and rhythm to the voice, and then like the more modern likes of like Sinead O'Brien, like she's so
Yeah.
melodic in your singing, and I think that is quite inherent to the Irish accent as well. It's always been told it's quite sing-songy,
For
and
sure. Yeah.
obviously big background of writers and then lyricism. But yeah, I think it's sometimes it can be a bit monotone and you try inject a melody after, but I think it kind of falls naturally out of the rhythm and the guitar lines.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. I'll have to give it a bash at some point, see if I can do any. You mentioned Sinead O'Brien there briefly. Like
Mm.
there's so many talented artists and bands and stuff coming out of Ireland at the moment, and like coming from Wales, like I don't want to reduce Ireland to the type of place where you're like, oh, you're from Ireland, you must know Fontaines DC or whatever, because I've had
Yeah.
that being from Wales. But is there a kind of community forming? Like, do you kind of feel that there is that feeling amongst the bands and the artists coming out of Ireland?
I think there is a feeling of a real strong music community. Um, it's strange though because it feels very online. Like
Right.
obviously we've spoken to most bands online because no one's been to a gig since February
Yeah.
last year, and like you haven't seen people in person, and we've been in really strict lockdown. So, um, like the likes of Fontaines and Murder Capital and stuff, I think they're based in London now. So Sinead O'Brien,
Oh, okay.
and they've kind of what's the word, like matured out of the Dublin scene for
Yeah.
a good bit now. But
Were all three of those from
yeah, I think
Dublin
there
as
is a real
well?
sense
Sorry.
of no, Sinead O'Brien isn't from Dublin. I think she's from Limerick or Galway.
Okay.
Limerick, I think. Fontaines and Murder Capital are Dublin were Dublin based, and I
Yeah.
think Silverbacks are a mishmash of like Galway
Right. Okay.
and around other spots. So this thing, there's also this misconception that like Dublin is like the hub, and I think that's kind of not everyone is from Dublin. They have to probably move to Dublin out of necessity because it's
Yeah.
our only major city really,
Of course.
and the only major music hub besides Cork and Galway.
Yeah.
Um,
Same with Cardiff, probably, I guess, for us.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I think we were literally, me and Jack were literally talking about this the other day that it's a sad fact that it's almost an inevitable, and it's more of a when, not if. Like if you're a musician in Ireland about moving to London,
Right. Yeah.
because the lack of opportunity or the probably the wealth of opportunity in London is just so much greater and will never be matched, and it will be impossible to match here with literally just the size of our country.
Yeah.
Um, that yeah, I think it's great to see a lot of recognition and a kind of a spotlight being shown on Ireland right now. But yeah, it's the community is all online, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. The world is on. Life is online at the moment, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. Like I think once gigs open back up, like that's the thing you miss is like meeting people at gigs and backstage and festivals, and that's where you really get to actually gel with people. Whereas online, like you're not going to reach out to people you've never met in real life and chat to them really.
Yeah. True.
So once gigs come back, it'd be great to actually see the tangibility of the community.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking forward to that. How is kind of music and the arts supported in Ireland? Is there much support, or is it kind of pushed aside? Is it important?
Um, yeah, it's a tough question. I think there's definitely not enough supports, but at the same
Yeah.
time, there's a lot of people dedicating a lot of their time and a lot of their lives to trying to support them. So the likes of like Imro and First Music Contact are doing everything they can to support the arts, but I think there's a lot of more kind of socioeconomic issues that are making it impossible. We
Yeah.
have like a severe rental crisis in Dublin.
Oh, wow.
It's just not affordable to live here.
No.
Like even like we were joking before you start recording that we all have real like career jobs
Yeah.
is purely for the fact that like I would not be able to afford rent if I didn't.
Really, it's that
If I
bad?
worked in a bar, I'd be paying probably 80% of my monthly wages on my rent. It's become astronomical.
That's
The
insane.
idea of owning a home is just a pipe dream
Yeah.
at this stage in Dublin. And the kind of inevitability of having to move to London if we want to make this a full-time career just means that buying a house isn't really a feasible prospect either for you.
Yeah.
Um, so I think yeah, like First Music Contact worked on a grant for the Department of Tourism and Culture, in Ireland, which has helped a lot of musicians get grants for things like album releases and recording, which is a much needed support. And Damo are always putting on like showcases and workshops to try like alert musicians to the supports that are available. And there's this great thing called Creative Minds, which offered like mental health support to musicians throughout the
Oh,
pandemic,
nice. Yeah.
and like free counselling services, because obviously the financial pressures along with the pressure of actually living through a pandemic
Yeah.
has been incredibly tough. But there's definitely a lot more that can be done. And I think the greatest threat to the arts is that we're kind of being squeezed and pushed out of the cities, not being able to fully pursue a career because you have to have a second career and you have to have a quote unquote real job.
Yeah.
It's almost like, when is music or anything in the arts going to be like looked at as a serious career path and not
Yeah.
something you do in your spare time and should be like worked on for free
Yeah.
or worked on
A
in your
hobby.
spare time?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always like quote unquote your side job or
Yeah.
your passion, and if you happen to make it out, then you're lucky or
Yeah.
you're one in a million.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas like the city and the country's beaming with talent, so why can't we foster it? Which in turn just drives more revenue through gigs and touring and industry
True.
and streaming and
Yeah.
stuff like that. It's just, yeah, there's no long term plan, it
Yeah.
seems.
It's because it's not as if there's no money in it. It's not as if it's a non-profitable kind of industry. Like, there is money in it. There is, like, people are willing to pay for things, maybe not as much as they should, but yeah, like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I was talking to someone the other day about, like, can you imagine going through lockdown without the arts, without music? Can you imagine how like, it was terrible as it was, but if you didn't have these distractions that come from the creative industries, how infinitely worse it would be. And you'd think that would make people post-lockdown think, oh wow, yeah, music and art and film and stuff, that really is important.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to be going that way, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think in the eyes of like the regular punter or whatever the most collective term would be,
Yeah.
people are really starting to understand that, like, if I buy an EP on Bandcamp or if I buy a t-shirt, that's helping support that artist 10 times more than if I just listen to their song on Spotify. And I
Yeah.
think like the average customer and fan is doing much more and is way more conscious and supportive. But at the end of the day is, unless we're voting people into power that share those views and share those passions and care about supporting the community, doesn't matter what me or you or someone who listens to Sprints does, it's what the people in power do. And unfortunately, they're just not. The people in power in Ireland just don't really give a shit about the arts.
Yeah.
And are doing a lot of things that aren't helping the economy or our society or the day-to-day life of young people. So I think, yeah, the pandemic made everyone realize how much we turn to the arts in dark or difficult times. But unless those people are politicians, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah. Yeah. The sad facts, I guess. Yeah. Depressing, but it's the way it is. Well, anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about Drones specifically.
Yeah.
It's not a single, really, is it? It's just one of the tracks on Manifesto, or are you releasing it as a single? Because it's got a video, right?
It was released as I think it was our first single off the EP.
Okay, cool.
I think that was like, I can't even, I lost all sense of time. It was some point in 2020.
Yeah.
It could have been like September, it could have been December.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you. But somewhere towards the tail end of 2020, I think that came out. That was kind of our first light release and our first release with Nice Swan from the EP. And then Manifesto was obviously the main single.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
lead single.
Because I was watching the video just earlier today for Drones, actually, and it's a super cool video, and like, it goes quickly from kind of unsettling at the start to almost like terrifying by the end. Like, it was good though. It was great. Like, where did kind of the concept and stuff, and how was it filming that for that track?
So that was filmed, I think, like during level 4 in lockdown.
Right.
There's a group of creators that we work with on pretty much all of our visuals. Hannah Gallagher, James Baldwin, and Bob Kyberd. They have pretty much been our go-to teams. They did the cheek for us. They did Drones.
Okay.
They did Kissing Practice, our video. And Connor O'Byrne would do all of our kind of photography and a lot of our stills and a lot of our artwork. They actually all just went to school and grew up in the same area as the boys
Oh,
from the band.
nice.
and we're just fortunate that our friends all happen to be very much into media and video and producing and directing. So we went to them with the song after they absolutely smashed the video for the Cheek and
Yeah.
Kissing Practice. We loved them. And yeah, we kind of go to them with the song. They'll come back to us with an idea, and we did have this kind of, obviously we kind of have a general idea in our head. The whole theme of the song is like imposter
Yeah.
syndrome and kind of the melancholy and mundanity of modern life. So we kind of went to them with that, and it was James, Bob, and Hannah that came back with the very Stepford wife kind of abject
Yeah.
surrealism, which is amazing. And it was just filmed out and about in Dublin, and the bathroom scenes were shot in my bathroom in my apartment.
Oh wow.
So
Yeah, close to home.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, very literally in my home.
Couldn't be any closer.
No.
Yeah, and you said there, and you said before that it's about imposter syndrome. Is a couple of questions going through my mind on that, really. Firstly, being what's the effect on your feelings of imposter syndrome being a woman in rock music and in punk music? Do you think they go hand in hand? That's kind of an obvious question. Like, I guess you feel that it does, but I wanted to know kind of what your more deeper feelings are about that.
Yeah, I think being a woman in a heavier kind of genre of music is tough, and it's not always one that's given a lot of representation. I think the gender disparity issue in music as a whole is something that really needs a closer look at, and the Why Not Her campaign in Ireland specifically is really looking at that and disparity in like radio play between female and male artists. But
Okay.
we were literally talking about this in the studio that um I suffer quite badly with imposter syndrome, and particularly feeling like I always have to prove myself, that sometimes when I'm writing songs I kind of judge them incredibly harshly, or I will try to like complicate them, or
Right.
music theory them up or something to
Yeah.
make them seem fancier and more impressive than I think they are, because from my experience it'll be those kind of sly comments about like, oh, we'll fix Column's lead bit here, and I'm like, oh, actually, I played the lead bit, or I wrote the lead bit, or there be people you meet at gigs and stuff who will be like, oh, and are you the singer? Are you the singer, or like, oh, who writes the songs and that kind of stuff, or
Right.
they'll be kind of, which aren't necessarily like meant to be snide, but I think everyone generally works off the assumption that it would be the guys would be the leaders,
Yeah.
and I think obviously our songs being so purposefully like female focused or women's issues, quote unquote,
Yeah.
or like particularly like queer focused, is almost like a personal step I've made as well,
Right.
to put my real stamp on them. Not that obviously like we don't write songs super collaboratively, as well, but yeah, I think when I was talking about it in studio, Colin even was like, "Oh, do you think you've had stuff like that happen to you?" And I was like, "Yeah, like." You kind of look back and realize all those times where guys would be like, "Oh, can you play this song on the guitar?" Or "What guitar do you even have?" Or "What do you even play?" Or
Yeah.
even the way people would talk about things like pop music, like it's an easier or shittier genre, and like female musicians like likes of Taylor Swift
Mm.
aren't credible,
Yeah.
nor are they noteworthy, or they are not deserving of respect. When if it was that easy to write all the songs, we'd all be out there and be millionaires, wouldn't we?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Why don't you do it if it's so easy? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, literally.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like to be honest, we're incredibly fortunate. We've worked with people like Daniel Fox, who is like the most supportive and like really like fosters, helps us like build our sound. And our team, like Alex and Pete and Steve from ATC, like everyone is so like, even with our tour, we've made it a point that we're nobody. Obviously, right now we're still super small, but we really want like a 50-50 gender split and like
Hmm.
all the supports. And you'll notice naturally like the promoters come back with bands, and it's not like they're doing it on purpose, it's just that is the issue, is that people don't realize there's such a majority of men in rock music
Yeah.
that we have to specifically seek out female fronted or non-binary, or non-all male acts, but it's an effort that we want to put in at the start because it'll only become easier and just makes other people aware. But yeah, it's definitely like an everyday issue, and you kind of think like, what can I do? But it's hopefully those little small things
Yeah.
are going to do something.
Yeah. Because I was thinking recently about kind of the state of feminism, I guess, and how we treat women in punk music and rock music and DIY music, at least. I feel like for the most part there are tragic kind of outliers, but for the most part we've gone beyond having to deal with kind of physical sexism in our scene. Like in the place that I work in, the pub where the podcast comes from, like we're so kind of pro feminism and kind of pro women and stuff that if there was any sort of like physical abuse, it'd be outrage. You'd be kind of outcast. That does not happen. But like you say, it's still, there's more subtle kind of influences and subtle problems that we have to deal with. Like I heard a thing from what's her name? It's a comedian, Catherine Ryan, and she was talking about these sorts of issues in comedy, where like she's doing fine for herself. She's got her own series and her own stand-up things and stuff, but she feels like if she has a place on Mock the Week or whatever, she's taking another woman's spot, and that's not how it should be. Like, why is there a finite number of spots for women, and yet the rest are filled by men? And I think there's things like that we need to deal with in our scene, I guess.
Yeah, and I think even like it's the same. Like the guys in the band are super supportive, and Jack like literally does like studies and essays and PhDs on like like female contraception and like reproductive rights, and he was super like active in the repeal referendum in Ireland. And the guys, like if I told them something or if I brought an idea to them, they would always be super open. Like we have so many songs that are about issues that have affected me personally, and not them because they're just not women, and not once has anyone blinked or been like, no, like we can't do that. So I'm fortunate I'm surrounded by really amazing people. But even just to look at like the festival scene, it is a sad state of affairs that often when it's called out, the lack of female acts, or the disparity between male and female acts, and that classic line that people always pull, like, well, if they're popular, like they're just booking popular acts, like they just happen to all be male, on this kind of thing. And it's looking at the kind of systemic issue and not that part of it. It's the fact that men have been afforded these opportunities for so much longer that of course they are the successful and popular acts because they've been on the charts and been given the bigger budgets and the opportunities for 50, 60 years running. Of course they're bigger. If everyone was afforded those equal opportunities from the beginning, we probably have naturally more split festival lineups and stuff like that. But the fact is that just doesn't happen. So hopefully progress and steps are being made. But I think the number one step is just to call it out.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of, I don't know, just call it out, like you say. Because I was thinking about the experiences you were sharing then about guys coming to you saying kind of what songs do you play, do you even play guitar, those sorts of things, and presuming that it's the guys in the band that write the songs or whatever. A part of it, and it's not acceptable, but a part of it is because that's how it's been for so long. That's what they expect, which doesn't make it any more right at all. But it's an issue of time and how things have always been.
Yeah, and obviously, like most of the time, people are taking the piss. And obviously, we're well able to take the joke, and I'm well able to take the piss out of myself and my abilities or lack thereof, my abilities in that case. No qualms in admitting that I'm not the best guitarist, the best songwriter, or the best singer or anything in the world. But I enjoy it, and I put like every blood, sweat, and tear and spare moment into it. So I'm going to defend it. But obviously, people take the piss and people want to have a joke, and we're all up for a laugh. But I think when it's pointing to a bigger issue or something that I'm quite I suppose like I really want to I've always felt I've had to prove myself a lot more, or even this idea that any of my friends will tell you have this kind of like a constant existential crisis or problem with aging or time, that I feel like if I don't make it, whatever that means, before I'm 30, that's pretty much my chance at music gone. And I didn't invent that pressure myself. Like I wasn't born feeling that pressure. I was taught that pressure, and I have watched it and I've experienced it and I've read it and I've seen it. And there's a reason why I feel that and the boys don't. That they know that they can fully be 65 and touring the world because the Rolling Stones and stuff are doing it, whereas people like Madonna have to reinvent themselves 65 times. So she can be credible, and still any article you see will be calling out how old she is and how young her boyfriend is. So there's real pressures, and I think just making sure those pressures are acknowledged and addressed is key.
It's true. And like Madonna, I feel, is always kind of attempting to look how she looked 20 years ago. Whereas, like you say, Keith Richards, he could be 2 million years old. Like, he's so old, and yet he doesn't battle it. He doesn't try to push it off or whatever, and nobody calls him out for looking old, you know what I mean? Like, he's still cool, and he's still held up as an icon. Why are the rules different? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. You mentioned briefly that you worked, that Daniel Fox of Girl Band produced the EP. How was that working with him? That must have been a great experience, right?
Yeah, so we worked with him. I think we've worked with him on every release except The Cheek, because The Cheek was actually recorded before Kissing Practice.
Yeah.
But Kissing Practice onwards, everything's been done with Dan, and the new stuff was done with Dan. I'm trying hard not to give away something I'm not supposed to.
Don't ruin anything.
So the new material was done with Dan Fox as well, and I think this time round we really felt that we broke down the walls a little bit and built an actual relationship, because we were in there for 7 days straight, and you go mad, you go a bit insane.
Yeah.
In the studio, it's small, dark rooms. It was like 20 degrees outside. We were so annoyed. The 1 week it was sunny in Dublin, we were stuck indoors. So you'd be going out for like having a beer on your break, or having a smoke on your break, and trying to catch as much vitamin D. But yeah, it's great working with him. I think this time round, our songwriting and our music had progressed so much. I think he was not happier to work on it, but I think it was more his bag as well, this kind of music, as well as ours. I think we were listening to the songs and going like, these are good, like we can stand behind these much more, even more so than Manifesto.
Yeah.
So it was great to kind of get that validation and that positive feedback. But I think the fact that he's always open to trying stuff and simultaneously not being afraid to tell you if something sounds really shit works well for us. So yeah, it was a great experience, and yeah, actually I didn't think I would, but I missed the studio now, because we were in there for 7 days non-stop, just eating, drinking, just talking in Aussie accents, having a ball.
Well, that's a good sign, I guess. Yeah, if you still miss it after 7 intense days straight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. It's funny, Girl Band, because like I love them now, but I had to grow into them, kind of thing. They were the first band, I think, that made me feel old when I first listened to them. Because like I've always liked like noisy bands, like that's always been my thing. But I heard Girl Band for the first time. Someone showed me them, and I was like, "Oh, it's a bit too noisy." Like I had to check myself. I felt like I was like a 60-year-old listening to Black Sabbath for the first time or something. I'm like, "Oh man, I'm gonna have to get this band. I need to know this band just so I'm not old." You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. It's very noisy, but it's amazing, especially live.
Yeah. I'd love to see them live. Yeah. Yeah. You'd be a great kind of together on a bill, Girl Band and Sprints. Yeah, that should happen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
See if we can convince Dan Fox. Unlikely though.
Well, I don't want
he's sick of us at this stage.
Yeah? Oh no, I'm sure not. He just needs to be let out, let onto the live scene again, not in the studio, I'm sure. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but we do this thing on the pod. We've got the listening post, it's called, where it's just a Spotify playlist where we like to ask the guests that we have on of recommendations that we'd add to this playlist. Something that you're listening to right now, or something that's kind of influenced you a lot as a band, or just a recommendation that you think people should listen to more. So what would you and Sprints in general like to add to the Le Pod listening post?
Oof. This is always such a high pressure question.
I know. And I always feel like I should prep people, but then I want the real answer. I don't want them to kind of study it. And,
off the cuff.
Yeah.
We've been listening to a lot of Yard Act lately.
Okay.
That's a big one for us. I just got the Dark Days EP.
Yeah.
I also just got the PJ Harvey reissue of Her.
Right.
So I think PJ Harvey is probably... I'm not giving you any songs here though. I just realised.
Something off Dark
album.
Days. What's a track that stands out on Dark Days? Not that.
I love Dark Days. I love the title
song.
Because I think that's obviously the newest one as well. So Peanuts and The Trapper and stuff like that came out, or Fixer Upper, and they've been out for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dark Days.
Yeah.
The newest one. Love it. Yeah, really, really good.
Sick. Yeah, I'll happily add that to the listening post. Great. Awesome. Thank you so much, Karla. Thank you for your time. Where can people find out more about Sprints, and what have Sprints got coming up? Like, what do you want people to kind of listen and find out?
Yeah, so we're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook just under Sprint Music. And then I guess the next biggest thing is our UK and Ireland tour, October and November of this year. So a lot of the gigs in the UK actually are like over 50% sold out now. So
Oh, okay.
really happy with that. But yeah, they're towards the end of October and start of November, so it looks very, very likely to go ahead. So yeah, catch us in playing like 10 cities in the UK, 4 dates in Ireland. So really excited about that, and then hopefully loads of new music to share soon. But I can't say anything yet,
Amazing. And
unfortunately.
there is a Bristol date as well, which is our closest one.
There
So
is a Bristol date and Rough Trade, yeah, which we're
get
very
to Rough
excited
Trade.
about. Love Rough Trade.
Yeah, class. Awesome. Thank you so much. Good luck with it all. Yeah, and thank you for your time and all the best.
Great, thanks so much.
Nice one.